Right, good morning everybody and welcome to the Artist's Well. This is our 15th episode. They're really adding up now, aren't they? And I'm delighted this morning to welcome Yanny Petters. Yanny is a botanical artist. Hi there, Yanny. And you're very, very welcome. I'm delighted you could come along. Yanny is an amazing botanical artist. She has work in the Kew Gardens collection, which she will tell us about. The Botanic Gardens, all sorts of collections around the world. And we're going to firstly do a studio visit. Now, like a lot of artists, they either don't have Wi-Fi in their studio, or it's very poor quality and it's too much of a risk to conduct the entire thing somewhere like that. So Yanny has very kindly, with her husband, I believe, done a short visit to the studio, and we're going to bring that up now before we say hi.
This is Glendara Studios, a purpose-built studio. It was built by Fiona Coffey, who's a fellow artist, in the 1990s with the help of a Leader grant. It houses about 11 artists, some of whom are sharing studios. I'm just going to bring you inside to give you a look at the space. It's a great place to work because there's always a buzz of activity and great work ethic going on here. Now here is the front hall. In the front hall there's a little printing press or a proofing press, which I often use for doing my Christmas cards and things. And here we are in the canteen. This is unfortunately not in use at the moment, but has been a great place to meet and catch up with the news amongst fellow artists. Then we have a print setup which is under renovation at the moment, but really looking forward to that being set up again because I like doing a bit of printmaking. And here we have the studio I share with Fergal Flanagan, who's a landscape painter. We've been sharing this place for quite a while now. The space itself is about 5 meters square. We have good light from all angles, and here I have a large workbench, which is very handy, and a bit of storage space underneath. And then when you look over this way, this is a large easel which I use for doing drawings, especially the big drawings I do, which I can show you later. Over here I have a piece of test work. I've been painting on convex glass using old security mirrors. So I removed the silvering and I used the glass to paint on. And this was a test piece for a series that I've done, which you'll see later. Then over here I have an easel or a drawing board which I inherited from my dad. I spend quite a lot of time standing here to work. It's got good light with this LED white light, which I can also, that LED light I can also put over the tall easel if I have to. And then just the rest is my reference books and gilding materials, engraving, etching, and all the various bits and pieces I do. Paint brushes and paints, all the stuff you can't do without. So that gives you an idea of the space we work in. I feel very lucky to be here and to be in such good company.
So you're very welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here and see so many familiar faces as well.
Indeed, indeed. Now, just because I haven't met you in person, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, you know, your story. And I know you were born in Ireland and you're living in Enniskerry and so on, but can you give us a little bit of a flavour of your life to date? A potted history, maybe?
Very potted, yeah. Well, I'm the daughter of German parents who came to Ireland in the early 1950s.
Yes.
And they moved to Enniskerry in 1956 to this house. And they were both well, my mother was particularly artistic. She was a ceramicist before she left Germany. She didn't manage to set that up when she came to Ireland, but she was always very artistic. And when we were kids, she always encouraged us to make things and draw and paint. And my dad was an engineer, so he had an office in Dublin. He actually worked with Hohlfelds to begin with, and then set up his own company, which he ran until his death in 1998. And my mother, who's also unfortunately passed away in 2014, was a great gardener and was really my inspiration for the botanical aspect of what I do, because she loved all the little wild plants that survive and eke out a living. And her great phrase, on which I based a whole exhibition in 2016, was "Komm mit mir, ich zeig dir mal was Schönes," which is "Come with me, I'll show you something beautiful." And it still comes back to me when I'm in the garden.
Yes, I can imagine. And have you always been drawing and had an interest in art from a very young age?
Yeah, and well, in school, when the art department was where I did all my messing and didn't get up to much useful in the other departments. But yeah, that I knew I was going to do something artistic with my life, and I ended up going to the College of Marketing Design in the 80s. Didn't stay there, but I did want to do something. I actually wanted to do graphics. I'd like to have done engineering because that was my dad's field, but girls weren't allowed to do that in school when I was in school.
I see.
You had to do home economics.
So you there your dad's table, so that he obviously used that as a drawing.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, he did a lot of engineering drawings, and I helped him with them later on in life.
Fantastic.
But yeah, so I went to Parnell Square, and that's where I met my now husband.
I can see.
So it's a long time ago, nearly 40 years.
Yes.
And then I left there to go to Switzerland, because my parents were very keen for both my brother and I to go back to Germany, because they felt, well, the 1980s in Ireland, there wasn't much going on. So they set up this, it was like a 6-month job in a theatre in Basel. It was a kind of a hard work, but also you were supposed to be training, but actually it ended up just being hard work. So I was pretty miserable there, but it kind of gave me the idea that maybe I could do stage design. But then I came back, and I actually, through friends, I met Michael Gemmell, the artist Michael Gemmell, who was just setting up a signwriting business in Ballsbridge at the time, and he was looking for an apprentice. So I worked with him for 3.5 years doing pub interiors, mirrors, signwriting, lots of amazing stuff. And I just heard that the Runner Bean is closing down, and that was one of the first signs I did.
Was it really?
So,
and tell me, is this how you came across the Ver Eglomise?
Yes, the painting on reverse painting on glass would have been very much a sign writing technique. You'd still see a lot of the old glass signs on pubs, where the gold leaf is applied to the back of the glass, and also for mirrors, and where the mirror would have, whiskey mirrors, Guinness mirrors, that kind of thing. So I was fascinated by the way the color works on the glass. And so when I moved on, I went then to London in 1983. I was there for about 10 years, and I did antique restoration, often doing things like restoring glass work, and doing sign writing and for pubs there, mostly Irish pubs. So that was very much the training I got in sign design was absolutely invaluable.
And presumably, did Tony go to London with you?
Yeah, he actually went before me, and then I couldn't live without him.
Yeah. Okay. So bringing it forward a bit now, I know you're doing workshops as well.
Yeah.
That's not at the moment, but you have been.
Well, still trying to keep them up. When I came back from London, I worked on a C scheme, which in Signal Arts Centre in Bray, which again gave me a great opportunity to figure out what I was going to do in terms of what theme I would work in.
Yes.
So I started working in the botanical art, and so that kind of led me on to working with people in terms of not so much in a teaching environment, but actually sharing what you do.
Yes.
Which isn't that easy when you're kind of working on your own all the time. Actually putting what you do in words is actually quite difficult. So that gave me quite good training in the 1990s. And then I started painting full time.
Mm-hmm.
I was currently now, obviously, well, I suppose since the latest recession after the boom, we're all looking for ways of getting a few bob in, and luckily Neil Condren, who runs the schoolhouse, approached me and asked me would I be interested in being a tutor there, and that really has been my bread and butter to a great extent, and I really enjoy teaching, and it's made me think about my practice in terms of putting it into words. So it's I mostly teach watercolor technique.
Yeah.
So the artists might not go home with a painting, but they'll know a load of tricks.
No, yes, yeah, very good.
So the schoolhouse is a really great setup.
It is, and it's obviously very, very close to where you live.
Yeah, dead handy. Just
Scary village there. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Tell me about your collections that you have in various places like the Botanical Gardens in Dublin here, and also Kew. Can you tell me the story behind Kew and how you got it in there?
Well, in 2003, I was having a two-man show with Michael Gemmell on the theme of bogs, and it was in the Davis Gallery. And I'd been in London a few weeks before, and I bought a catalogue from an exhibition in Kew. And I was looking at it and I thinking, I have to invite the lady who wrote this catalogue to my exhibition. So I wrote to her, and I got a very nice letter back apologising that she couldn't come to the opening, but she would be in Ireland around that time because her husband was considering buying the Shelburne. So she said she'd be staying there, so would I just bring around a few paintings and she'd have a look. So one of the paintings of moss, which she then acquired, was the first piece that she acquired. This is Dr. Shirley Sherwood, and she built a gallery specifically for botanical art in Kew Gardens, and it's a great honour to be in that collection. Absolutely. Because it's just rubbing shoulders with all the famous botanical artists. It's just fantastic.
Wonderful. And can you see your work in the Irish Botanical Gardens? Is there?
Well, in fact, the director has my the painting that the OPW bought is in the director's office. So
even better.
So you have to make an appointment with Matthew Jebb if you want to see it.
I see. And more recently, you were honoured by the National Museum of Ireland acquiring.
And thanks to.
Yeah, and we're going to see that at the very end of the presentation.
Yeah, and that was a piece I made for Sculpture in Context. I've constantly over the years done little bits of sculptural work because I love sort of experimenting and broadening what I do. So I made a piece for this year's Sculpture in Context, which unfortunately is only online. But from that and through the good offices of Olivier, the National Museum agreed to acquire that, so it's absolutely fantastic. I'm delighted about that.
A wonderful accolade to have.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me, I was going to ask you what do you do when you're not doing what you're doing? Have you any pastimes or hobbies that
well, I love walking and observing, and I wouldn't necessarily walk far or go up mountains or anything, but I do go out with a group once a week approximately. But other
your eye is focused on work all the time, probably, is it? As in, what's that?
Well, yeah, just observing. I love looking for new stuff and how things change through the seasons, and just it's just really fascinating. The world is just so incredible.
And what would your favourite place be to forage for materials?
Well, I love going to the Burren.
Yes.
And I haven't been there in May for a long time when all the gentians are out and the orchids, but we'd often go to the Willie Clancy Summer School, which is in July in Milltown Malbay. And while my husband is taking photographs of the traditional Irish musicians, I go off to the burn and get on my hands and knees, and usually end up with a few ticks, but I get lots of drawings and photographs we're looking at for later.
And you must be a bit of a mine of information about different species of plants at this stage.
Well, right? I'm always being asked on the walks, Yanny, what's this one called? Yes. And it might be something quite, sometimes people spot things that are quite obscure. I don't know the Latin names, but I tend to, anything I've painted before, I'll
you read up on the name. Yeah, very good. Okay, listen, let's have a look at some of your work.
Yeah, sure. So this was in the early 1990s back in London, and the recession had hit London, and I had been doing a lot of work for companies who were doing gilded mirrors for the Arab market. Yes. But that all dried up around the early 90s, so I started trying to find ways of making work that could sell to restaurants and things like that. So I started doing these tabletops. So that the reason I put this up is it shows you all the skills I learned in sign design, which was that painting on glass, the sign writing, the gilding, and the special effects of the shadows on the lemons, that kind of thing. And that's what that was about. And then I got somebody to make the table legs for me.
So sorry, can I just ask you? Forgive me if you stop. Is this done in glass?
Yeah,
it is. Okay.
Laminated glass is about 10 mil thick.
Very good. Okay, lovely.
Heavy. My earliest glass painting exhibition was, I think, in the early 2000s. I couldn't find the date on that one. Actually, it might have been 2002. I had an exhibition in a place called Kudos in Ashford. And they were a design company, and they had a little gallery, and I made a series of paintings where it's quite difficult to see in this photograph, but what I did was I engraved the outline of the plant and then painted in everything, but the engraved outline, you can kind of see it a little bit on the stalk of the dandelion that's going out to the left. There's like a little sparkle. And that's because I actually engraved the glass. And what I did at the time was, before I painted the painting, of course it's all done in reverse, don't forget. Yes. I inked up the line, the engraved line, and took a print from that, like an intaglio print. And then I painted the painting and mounted it with canvas behind it. So you can see a slight shadow where the light is, you'll see it around the edges of the leaves. And that was the first time I thought of glass as a canvas, but that you're putting things suspended in space. You're not filling in the background. So you'll see that as a thread that goes through my work. Right.
Yeah, presumably, Yanny, the first imprint you make or mark that you make is the thing that is going to be at the top.
Yeah, it's like in an oil painting, you do it last, whereas I have to do all the highlights and things first. Exactly. So there's a lot of layers, so it can take quite a long time because I have to allow each layer to dry. Exactly. So yeah, it can be fairly convoluted, and I have to plan it really well because I can't go back. If I discover a mistake in previous layers, I have to take the whole lot off.
Yeah, exactly. And tell me, what medium are you using for that?
This is sign writer's paint, so it's lead-based, oil-based paint. Has a really good flow and fantastic opacity. So it would have been, it's a sign writer's paint that you'd use on timber as well as glass. It's particularly designed for glass.
Yeah. Does it dry quickly?
Well, overnight. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the piece that Dr. Shirley Sherwood acquired. It's Common Moss, 2003. That was part of the exhibition where I think I had about 12 paintings in the Davis Gallery. Most of the rest of the paintings were acquired by the OBW, and they're actually in the what do you call it? It's the nature centre that they have in Trooperstown up near Glendalough.
Yes, yes.
And they have them there. So it was part of it. It was like a commission for a percent for art thing. They were building that building at the time. So again, this is painted in reverse on the glass and mounted so that the canvas behind is about an inch further back from the glass so that it casts a shadow. And it's funny, because I hadn't seen this work for years, and then I was in Kew Gardens and I looked at it again. I thought, well, did I really do that? It's like I must have had a huge amount of patience.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, so there's a whole series of those bog paintings. So again, this one, this is called An Irish Meadow. It was, well, I think I painted it, and then Shirley Sherwood had said to me, whenever you paint something new, let me know. So I had painted this section of a meadow, a sort of typical meadow. The grasses and everything were from the local fields. It has clover and vetch and bird's foot trefoil, plantain and various grasses in there. And so Shirley then acquired that one as well. So I'm very, very delighted that she has that. And there's a few insects and spiders in it as well, but they're very small, so you can't see them here. One of the things I've always been fascinated by is the old herbals and the way the artists squeeze quite a lot of information into a small piece of artwork. And I mean, I've always looked at those, you know, like the Mughal emperors' manuscripts where the tiny little flowers are around the edges, and you know, using the space to its best degree. And with botanical illustration, you're also trying to show the plant in all its seasons and you know, as much information for identification as possible. So I was looking at herbals from the Middle Ages, and that kind of inspired me to do this set of little paintings. They're only 21 centimeters high, and this was in 2010. I did a whole series of these, and I was experimenting with the gold leaf. So the plant, except for the outlined leaves, the plant is painted first, and then there's gold leaf laid behind it. So it's more typical in terms of Vera Glamise, and the term Vera Glamise is actually about gold on glass, but it can include paint. And the term comes from a guy called Glomy, who decided to name the term to differentiate it from stained glass. So all my work is intended to only be lit from the front. It's not, you don't light it from behind. It's not translucent. So in this situation, I've put in the gold leaf, so you can see the glow on the strawberries and that. And then I've painted the whole back of it. So I haven't done what I did with the dandelion previously, where I had clear glass behind. I just wanted to try, in a way, to make it look a little bit like vellum. So that was a series. So carry on to the next one, which is my Burren Meadow. Yeah. This is 2008. So I was kind of jumping back and forth a bit there, but this one is 60 centimeters square. And again, I was trying to play with the combination of drawing and painting. And I discovered that by using acid to etch the glass before I painted, I could use water-soluble pencils so that the plants that are colored here are colored first with water-soluble pencils and then painted over with oil paint on the back to protect them. And then the whole thing is painted flat. I actually used sponges so that's why it looks slightly different tones at the edges. I used a sponge to apply the background color. So, and
Yanny, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Presumably, because you're talking about layered, you know, layers of colors and so on, that what you're putting behind has a continuous effect on what's in front.
Yeah, so it's a bit like watercolors. What you build up in layers the white will glow through it. So yes, it has a translucence, but it's not intended to have light shining through it from the back.
And that's the difference between stained glass and bare.
Yeah.
Very good.
So yes, this would have been the same period. This is 70 centimeters high. This has just gone to a private collection in France, which is great. Again, it's the combination of drawing and painting. And my idea behind having just elements colored is you can see more of the plant. If it was all colored, it becomes quite chaotic and a bit too much information. So you can read the information better if only parts are colored. And that would have been in botanical illustration, that would have been a common way of making the information clearer.
Yes.
And in this case, I've added in the companion plants to the poppy. There's a wild poppy from, it would have been, well, of course, they're not very popular with the people growing grains, but they're absolutely beautiful. So we'll carry on to the next one then. So this was then skipping back again. This is 2013. I had an exhibition with Olivier. And I've been with Olivier, it must be 14 years now. I think Olivier can tell me that. And I did again, looking at the old herbals. I had an exhibition called Floral Alchemy, and that was when Olivier was down at Temple Bar. This is 21 centimeters by 15. Again, it's the water-soluble pencil on the acid-etched glass. And in this case, I've only etched the plant. So you can see where there's a kind of a, like a frosted area. Some of the leaves aren't actually painted at all. I've used the acid etching as part of the finish. And then I've used the watercolor pencils, and then I'll show you one of these from the back later on, so you can see what it looks like when I've painted the back of it. So yeah, that's there's a whole series of those, and that's vetch. That was, I think I had about 12 pieces in that exhibition, all done in a similar way. The other thing that I like about playing with getting a lot of information into one space, it kind of makes me think of not just the manuscripts, but also the interlacing of the Book of Kells, and that it's got many facets. So this is just showing you part of the technique where I've masked off the clear glass. So the glass I use is crystal clear, so it's known as iron free. Because window glass is green, so I get this optically clear glass for my work. And what I do is I cover the glass with vinyl, and then I cut out the design. I'll have done the drawing. I lay the drawing under the glass. I'll cut the vinyl, so I'm left with the outline of the plant, and then I'll etch that. So it's hydrofluoric acid, which is a highly dangerous. If you got that on your skin, it'll just keep burning, so you have to be very careful. So that etches the glass, so that gives a key to the paint, so that it sticks better.
Yanny, do you have to do that with every single painting on glass, etch it?
I tend to now, because of the technique I'm using, because I'm using the pencils. Okay. Because they work really nicely on that textured surface. It's a bit like it's not as rough as sandblasting, but it is rough.
Yeah. And does that not affect the appearance of the paint that you're putting on?
No, you'll see that from the front then, because
okay. Yeah.
It's still clear glass then.
Yeah.
So it's in close contact with the surface. So this is the front of that painting. That was for an exhibition that Olivier had on the theme of a poem called Elevation by Baudelaire. And in the research I did for that, I was looking at how in the paintings of the Madonna, the wild strawberry tends to be included, and it's partly because they're a symbol of the way to heaven. So the wild strawberry has always been associated with Madonna. Also in native Indian culture, they're considered a heavenly plant. So that was part of that theme, and you'll see if you go on to the next one now, that's what it looks like from the back.
Wow, yes.
So there's lots and lots of layers gone in, and then after I've finished applying the watercolor pencil, I paint over that with the oil-based signwriters paints, and that enriches the color.
It's amazing. You know, it's almost like you're painting blind.
Well, I am in a way. I mean, I have to keep turning the glass over to check.
Yes.
So it's very slow, and I have to plan. Like every brush stroke is planned.
Yeah, fascinating.
But bit mad. So, okay, this was 2016. I had an exhibition in memory of my mother's garden and of her garden, and the exhibition was called "Komm mit mir, ich zeig dir mal was Schönes," which was really in her garden. She was in the garden all the time and always drawing my attention to the kind of the smaller details of things. And she wasn't a great, I mean, she'd love to have weeded everything, but we didn't, because our garden is a little bit semi-wild. So this one was for October. I love the rose hips and the brightness of the red. And I built it up in many layers. It took, I think it was the most convoluted painting I did. Behind it there's a palm tree, and so it's the layers of how things have kind of knitted together. And part of my kind of theme through my work is about the symbiotic relationship between plants and ourselves, and how everything's interdependent. So I love that kind of nest of things going on there, and all the shadows and things. So this was also from that exhibition. This is just to give you an idea of the size. It's 57 centimeters high, and we have quite a lot of bluebells in the garden, a lot of wild ones, but also a lot of cultivated ones, and they've been hybridizing. So these are possibly kind of a hybrid. And in the background, you'd see that there's like a shadowy shape of leaves, and that's acid etched. That's just acid etched, and they're the leaves of the plants that will come after the bluebells die off. So it's kind of showing the continuity as well of the season. So there were 12 paintings in that exhibition, and they all kind of related to each other in terms of one for each month. So the next one will show you that painting in progress. So that's the combination of watercolor pencil applied, and you can see the drawing behind the glass there. And some of those have had the oil paint applied as well. So you can see it's quite a slow process. So this one is black currants, 57 centimeters high, also from that exhibition. And what's different about this one is, look at the leaves. I started playing with printmaking, as in nature print. So applying pigment to leaves and then imprinting them mostly on paper, and you'll see some of the paper ones later. But I also wanted to experiment with doing that on glass. So again, in this case, I acid etched the whole plant, and then I used leaves from that plant, the black currants, and imprinted the veins of the leaves first, and then painted over that. So it's got 2 or 3 layers. But what I like is the way the randomness of the imprint of the leaves it sort of creates the skeleton of what comes after. So that's it. And
Yanny, is that a natural shadow that's been cast, or is that etched by you?
The shadow is because the glass is mounted an inch away from the background.
Yeah, okay.
The teasel, which is also in the Dr. Shirley Sherwood collection is 159 centimeters high, so about, I suppose it's about 6 feet. This one again, I engraved the outline. So I went back to, because of the spikiness of the plant, I went back to engraving the glass, and I used the watercolor pencils and the oil paint and aspects, acid etched the whole plant. I mean, it nearly did my head in trying to get the heads of the teasels right, because they're based, the structure is based on the golden ratio. And I mean, I love that about plants, that the structure is fascinating. So this was quite a challenge, this painting. So I was delighted when Dr. Shirley acquired it, because it's been shown in Kew a few times now. And the next picture is a detail of that.
Wow. Yeah.
So when I was painting that, I had to really plan the shadows in the hollows of the heads on the teasel, because that's what defines that pattern. So yeah, it was slow to do, and that's where I used my big easel a lot, because you know, imagine this piece of glass is quite big and awkward, and I had to keep turning it around to check what I was doing. So
would you, when you're doing something like this, would you continuously work on that until it's finished, or would you start that, go on to something else?
I'd often have a couple of things on the go because of the drying times. So
yes, of course,
yeah, especially with having an exhibition where I'm putting together an exhibition, I might have to be moving along fairly quickly, because you know, an exhibition takes me about 2 years to create, so I'd have to have a few things on the go. This was for also an exhibition that Olivier commissioned, was on the theme of climate change. And around that time, I went to Anna McCarrick on a retreat, and I was playing with printing whole plants. And it was a great opportunity, because Anna McCarrick has an incredible print setup. And I had it all to myself. I had 3 printing presses to play with. So this one is part of a series of 4, and it's the crop wild relatives of, so the ancestors of the vegetables that we've cultivated. And this is a carrot. So much in the way that a botanical illustration would have enlargements of the smaller parts of the plant. You have the flower, the seed head, the seed, and the seeds. And the plant itself was inked up and printed onto paper. So it's only the bits at the right hand side that are engraved and painted on the glass, and the actual plant is on paper. This was part of the body of work I made at Anna McCarrick, where I went along the hedgerows and gathered plants and first pressed them in the printing press, and then applied different tones of ink and layered them up. So each piece might have gone through the printing press about 5 times. So that was for an exhibition in the Seamus Ennis Art Centre in Dunall, which was in 2018. And so then I decided to try and apply a bit of colour to it, and did this one for the Watercolour Society in 2018, I think. It's about 32 centimetres high. And again, so I was using a mixture of watercolour and acrylic. And to make the acrylic work more like an ink, I used flow improver, so that it didn't dry as quickly, because with the printing press you need the ink to stay open, and then you're printing onto wet paper, so acrylic would dry too quickly to use it pure. So that was a bit of an innovation. Yeah. So the previous one that was on paper, now I've done it on glass. So the difference with this one is that behind, so this is 2 layers of glass. Behind the colored image you're seeing, there's a mirror, and the mirror has been acid etched. So this is based on the idea that when you walk past a hedgerow in the winter and you see the light through it, you're seeing the detail, but you're also seeing the silhouette. So I wanted to create a kind of a multi-layered effect. So on the mirror, there's printed leaves as well. So you're seeing those in the gap there at the bottom. And then when you go on to the next image, this is what it looks like from the back. So I applied gold leaf to some of the leaves, and they reflect off the mirror. And parts of the mirror are clear because I've printed using a varnish, which makes the frosted part go clear again. And the whole idea behind that is that we can see ourselves in the landscape. So when you look at it closely, you're seeing your own reflection. And because hedgerows are man-made, I want to, and that was part of the hedgerows exhibition in 2019. I wanted to bring across the idea that the symbiotic relationship we have with the landscape is, it's with humans as well. It's not just between plants and animals. And this was also part of that exhibition, Hedgerows, Stories from a Linear World. And again, here I used the plants to print on the glass, but I used 24 karat gold, yellow gold, and white gold, and black. So you can see that there's different tones of gold leaf, and some of it's reflective. So yeah, very convoluted. And then we have this piece now was for the series I mentioned in the studio. I've done 3 of these on convex glass, and they're partly for an exhibition I'll be having in Ollie's Gallery in the end of next year, called Field of Vision. And they were inspired by going to Castle, because there's an exhibition there called Castle Domain Through the Artist's Eye, and I did I did 3 paintings. 2 are there, based on their wildflower meadow, and I collected the plants there and used them to make the piece. So yeah, that was quite an undertaking. A lot of the things I try, I have to try them properly. So that I like this piece because it's got lots of little things going on where I try out things. So, and then finally, this is the piece that's going into the National Museum in Collins Barracks, which I'm delighted about. And it was for Sculpture in Context this year. The idea behind it is that each of the blades of the fan represent a wild habitat, which could be endangered by climate change. And the reason people are using hand fans more is because it's getting too hot. So the idea is to use a fashion item. It's also something that's historically a beautiful artifact, but to put across the message that we need to be keeping in mind, why things are developing the way they are. And so I made the drawings for each of the panels, or the blades of the fan. I got those laser cut in birch ply, and then the little panels at the top, which are colored, are pieces of glass which I cut to fit, and then acid etched those and used the watercolor pencil to paint the plants. So
and they represent different habitats, is that
That's right, yeah. So you have the burren, you have woodland, you have fields. Did I make a list of them? So from left to right, it's the burren, it's a crane's bill. Woodland is a bluebell. Grassland is a red clover. Bogs is the bog bean. Heath is the bog asphodel. Hedgerow is the bramble. Fen is the ragged robin. Seashore is the sea campion, and wetland is the marsh marigold. I could have chosen any plants, but I did want to try and get the colours so that there wouldn't be loads of yellow ones, or try to choose the plants for that. Very good. So there you go.
Well done on that. That's absolutely superb.
Thank you.
Super. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up to everybody. So if anybody wants to ask a question, please unmute yourself and feel free to ask a question. I know there are a few down in chat, which I haven't seen yet, because I can't see it on my screen until we move. The paintings of glass look just as if you took a clump of meadow grasses and flowers and mounted them. So realistic, wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, I was asked by someone in that early exhibition, 2003, did they have to water it?
Really? Yvonne also asked, do you do any workshops in glass painting?
I do occasionally, yeah. I've done them in the Schoolhouse for Art. So it'll be like an introduction to painting on glass.
Sure, okay. Lucille says, amazingly beautiful. Jean Klein says, wow, that's incredible. Lucille, how do you draw your work first on paper? Sorry, do you draw your work first on paper so that you know the order you are going to paint on the glass? Good question.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do a pencil drawing. I'd usually start by doing rough drawings and then refining and refining. But I wouldn't necessarily plan which layer I do first. That kind of, it's a bit like problem solving. As I go, I have to think about it. So I do a lot of scratching the owl head.
Yeah, Alico says, fascinating and absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
Autumn says, so beautiful and interesting. Really enjoyed this.
Okay.
Sandy McCanny, to everyone, inspirational work, fascinating blend of techniques. Did you create several of these yourself?
The techniques? Yeah.
In other words, the techniques themselves.
Yeah, I do a huge amount of experimenting. And
yes.
I spend as much time experimenting as making work. I'm always inventing the wheel and trying out things, yeah.
Jean says, how did you incorporate ideas about climate change?
Well, I've always been inspired by what's going on in the world, and rather than just painting for the love of painting, I like to tell a story. So and Olivier has been great in pushing his artists to work with themes. So it doesn't always work with every type of artwork, but it does challenge one to think about how one can bring in nature. And I mean, it's amazing, like nature involves us all and in every way. So yeah, I've used climate change is obviously very, very much the theme of the moment, but yeah, that's what's fascinating me.
Good. Sorry, there's another comment before we get on to the live. Olivia says, the privilege to being represented, to have represented you since 2004. Yeah, and I know, I mean, Olivier is fantastic. He's so proactive with his artists. He's quite unique, I'm sure, in that sense.
We're lucky to be. He only has a few artists, so we're lucky to be his stable.
He only has a few artists for a reason, and I understand that the reason is because, if you have too many artists, you can't possibly look after them the way he does.
Well, it means that each of us can pretty much have an exhibition every 2 years, which is, if I wasn't represented, I don't know how I'd be having exhibitions.
I know. Joe says, how do you decide the dimensions of your work?
Well, the plants decide that, as you can see from the teasel.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody want to ask a question? Please just unmute yourself and ask the question.
You talked about using coloured pencils. Are they just regular coloured pencils? Like watercolour pencils. Sorry.
Yeah, they're water soluble. They're the Caran d'Ache museum quality. So they're extremely light, fast, and have a good consistency.
Oh, okay. I was just curious about that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks,
they're the
Joe.
most expensive ones you can buy.
Yeah, I use Caran d'Ache all the time.
Yeah, they're very good.
Graphite, that is.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else?
Can I just ask, it's Morlin here.
Yeah, hi, Morlin.
How long does it take you to do those paintings? They're so intricate.
Some of them take months. Yeah, so they're different for each one, but yeah, it can take a hell of a long time. I think I did one where I counted the hours and it was something like 72 hours.
Yeah, not surprised. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Olivier here. Just want to say what is fascinating about Yanny's practice, in addition to the accuracy, the magic of her work, is the way that Yanny constantly explores new media. And I think that comes out in this discussion where she's mentioned so many different techniques, and Yanny constantly does that. What is the best sort of medium to represent what she's trying to achieve? And that's to be saluted, you know. She doesn't constrain herself to the techniques that she already knows, but sort of grows on that every time.
I appreciate you saying that, Olivier, because lots of people would say, you know, if you find a good medium, then stick with it, because if that's selling, then that's what you should be doing. But I'm far too curious to stick with one thing.
Yes, your work extends the botanical. I see yourself as a plant portraitist, first of all.
Yes, that's
and for me, that's a very important distinction. But yeah, the fascination that I have for your work, again, is the way that you explore all those media every time, the eagerness to learn. And I think it keeps your work fresh and exciting. Every new solo exhibition is an excitement for me. So I'm looking forward to your new exhibition next year.
Yeah.
Thanks, Yanny.
It's important.
Nicola adds to that, actually, interestingly, on the same topic. And I know Nicola because she's done some of my courses, but also yours. She says Yanny's watercolor workshops are very enjoyable. They definitely encourage experimentation and trying out new techniques. So obviously you encourage other people to do that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
it's definitely great doing workshops from lots of different people because you get something new from everybody.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, so it's a great way to do it.
Yeah. There's no rules.
Exactly.
Yes. Very good. Okay, before we wrap up, any other?
Yes, I have a question. It's Sandy.
Yes, Sandy.
I go out on botanical outings and collect specimens to learn a little bit more about them. And I'm wondering how Yannick manages to keep her plants for all those months. Obviously, she's not keeping the plants. Is it through photos? Is she pressing them?
Well, a combination of things, but I would do a lot of drawing in the field. So I see the plants in their home situation, so I can tell how they relate to each other. And, you know, say a climbing plant, try and see how it's actually climbing and what it's holding on to, things like that, little details like that. Then if I bring a specimen to the studio, I'll do further sketches, I'll do color studies, because obviously they're not going to last that long. You can put them in the fridge, and botanical artists have all sorts of little tricks about freezing them and I have a little terrarium, which you might have seen on the table in my studio. So I have that full of mosses and things, because I'm doing a commission at the moment, which entails lots of sphagnum moss. So yeah, different ways, but the drawing is the only way to get it into your head. And then photographs are useful as well. The laptop is very useful for checking things, but the only way you'll actually translate color accurately is to paint specimens and then use them for your further work.
And Rupert in Germany is asking, do you plan to make 3D work?
Well, I do quite a bit of 3D work for Sculpture in Context. That's my outlet. Yeah, I won't say too much about my exhibition that's coming up next year, but there will be some 3D work in that as well.
Top secret.
Big secret, yeah.
Yeah. Yvonne asks, can one visit your studio?
It's not really a public place.
No, you're sharing with so many other people.
Artists. Sorry?
Yeah, you're sharing with so many other people, it's probably not.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to come for a cup of tea, yeah, that's fine. But because it's a workspace and lots of other people are busy, working quietly, which we don't usually do that.
Sure, but in the meantime, if people want to see your work, they can see it in Olivier Cornet's gallery.
Absolutely,
it's
yeah.
in Denmark Street, just off Parnell Square.
Yeah.
Well worth a visit, but please, I know Olivier would say this, ring first. It's not that there's an issue, but he obviously wants to limit the number of people there at any one time, which goes
actually, in a way, the COVID thing has been good in that it means you get private time with Olivier.
Can I ask a question, Yanny? It's Michelle Boyle here.
Hi, Michelle.
How are you doing? That was absolutely beautiful, and it's just so gorgeous to see
Thank you.
that work and the sensitivity of your work. I'm just wondering how much of your practice or your process do you see maybe relates back to your German parentage? Do you or how is your work placed within a German art as opposed to?
Well, the Vera Glamise was a folk art in central Germany back in the Middle Ages, where it was used as the farmers actually painted icons, which they sold to the pilgrims coming from up through Italy. But it's a technique that's known all over the world, and I think the earliest Vera Glamise was actually Roman. But yeah, I mean, you could say my technique would be more familiar in Germany, in that there are museums there that have whole collections of botanical, or not botanical, but Vera Glamise. It's quite folksy, a lot of it. So I've kind of developed it to my own requirements and what I want to illustrate. But I suppose the key to mine that's different from everything you see is that I have the clear glass surrounding the plant. So I haven't come across anyone doing that yet.
I just want to say, Yanny, thank you so much. I just was bowled over by the beauty, the intricacy, and the delicacy of your work.
Thank you.
I'm going to go out to my garden now and look at my flowers carefully.
Look at the weeds.
Yes, well, thank you so much. It's a great start to a Saturday morning.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Lucille, for that. Any other questions?
I just had one question. I was just wondering when the exhibition is taking place next year.
October, isn't it, Ollie?
It's October next year, yes. And just to say as well that the fan piece going to the National Museum of Ireland is still with me at the gallery, just for a few days. So if anybody wants to see it before it joins the collection at the museum, you're more than welcome to come and have a look at it. It would be a pleasure to show it to you.
Very good, thank you. That's a good suggestion too. So you can really see it close up and personal.
Yeah.
So Autumn, you make a plan now to come to Ireland on October next year.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, just one final thing, Yanny. What's your future? How do you see your practice developing over, the next couple of years? Is there a direction you want to take?
Because I'm always playing with the sculptural aspect. I want to develop the glass work more than anything, but I'd also like to experiment with installation work. So if I can get the funding to do some bigger work, and maybe site-specific work would be great. So I'm kind of working towards in the proposed exhibition, which will be called Field of Vision. I'm thinking very much in terms of how we're viewing the world differently now that we've been restricted. So that will be. Yes, I know more.
Very interesting. Yes, top secret. Listen, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. And I'm beginning to realize that Wicklow is a hotbed of artistic talent. Because we had Connor there the other day, he's Wicklow. There's loads of talent down there. So listen, that's great. Thank you so much. You really brought an absolutely new, for me anyway, a new subject to light.
Great. Well, that's
amazing.
What it's about. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Maybe you'll come and do one of my glass workshops sometime.
Do that. Oh yeah, I will. Yeah, I'd love to do that. Okay, Yanny, and thank you all for listening in.
Cheerio.
And if you've enjoyed this, please give it a like and please subscribe to The Art as Well. It helps the artists themselves. The more publicity and the more exposure they get, it's great for them. So please do subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.